Hey everyone, and I'm Anna Marsh, and today is talk number 4 in the perimenopause series I have been doing in collaboration with Francesca Liparoti across the month of October. Today we are just kind of tying up loose ends. We're going to wrap up with a little bit of information on testosterone, and then we're also going to be talking a little bit about, addressing some questions that have been submitted prior to recording this today. So I'm just going to let Francesca, and then we should be able to get the show on the road. And so she should be with us any moment now. Hello,
Hi,
welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
No, I'm doing well today. I'm looking forward to wrapping up our final chat this morning.
Yeah.
So I was just saying before you jumped on with me that this is the fourth talk of a series of talks we've been doing across the month. So if you haven't watched talk number 1, talk number 2, talk number 3, definitely take a moment to go back and watch those. They're all linked as a series in my IGTV, so it should be easy enough to find. And today, obviously, I've got the lovely Francesca with me again, and we are wrapping up and talking about testosterone. So, Francesca, shall we just get the show on the road and talk a little bit about what's happening to testosterone as people transition through perimenopause towards menopause? What do people need to know?
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, testosterone, the first thing to understand is that it is really important for women. It's been thought of, obviously, historically as the male hormone, but women still have testosterone. We need testosterone. We just have it in lower levels, that's all. But it is still very important for us. So, really, we should be thinking of we should be thinking of all three hormones when we're talking about perimenopause, menopause, if we're talking about hormone replacement therapy. Estrogen, progesterone and testosterone are just as important, which is why we're obviously doing its own session today. But we do naturally start to lose levels of testosterone as we age, and obviously once we achieve menopause, our ovaries aren't making those hormones anymore, so we're going to have we're going to have lower levels. But testosterone is also, again, really commonly thought of in terms of libido, and of course it is important for that, but it's also important for so many more things. I hear so many women, and I was the same, you literally just think of it in terms of libido, or maybe building, like having lots of muscle or something, and being a woman who's more looks more manly or something. You might think, well, she's got lots of testosterone, but it really isn't like that. We need testosterone for our cognition, for good, like, cognitive health. So thinking things like foggy brain, lack of concentration, all of those things testosterone is helpful for. It's great for mood, energy levels, our strength. So if we're in the gym, for example, we're doing strength training or other workouts, and we're finding that we don't build muscle very well or at all, we're just not getting the results that we want, we're not burning fat, we're not getting stronger, that can be a sign of low testosterone. Yeah, really energy, motivation, confusion. A lot of women will talk about it in terms of feeling psychologically and physically like they're just sort of wading through treacle every day, and they feel like they've got cotton wool stuffed in their head. That can be testosterone, and some of those women have gone on to have been lucky enough to get testosterone as hormone replacement and feel great afterwards. And it's also quite common for women to receive diagnosis of, I mentioned this in terms of progesterone, but to be told they have fibromyalgia or even chronic fatigue sometimes, when actually all of these hormones are just low, or specifically testosterone is low, and that's not really being investigated.
Yeah, and I actually just wanted to jump on as you're talking, because a lot of the symptoms you've described, unfortunately, as is often the case, is they're quite universal. So for
Yeah,
someone, it could be a thyroid problem. For someone, it could be a progesterone problem, or for someone, it could be a testosterone problem.
yeah,
So
it's a
I think
huge.
it's really important that people get tested, isn't it?
Mm,
And in the context of today, talking specifically about testosterone, it's really, really easy to do.
yeah,
You can literally just get a blood test. You can ask your doctor for a blood testosterone level, or you can just go to a company like Medichecks. I've used them a few times, and just do like a finger prick
yeah,
test, and that will give you a fairly reliable assessment of testosterone.
yeah.
So I think if you are having these symptoms that you've described of, foggy brain, low mood, you're worried about your libido, and you're wondering if testosterone is something which is involved, really just get that tested and then you can rule it in or rule it out.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's so easy to do. I think you're the same. I use Medichecks to do mine. Obviously, yes, of course, you can ask your GP as well. And then just look at that reference range. And even if you are told that it's normal, see where it is in terms of that reference range. I was told my results back in February. I need to test them again, but in February they were normal. But when I looked at them, they're at the very low end of normal. So I'm not happy with that. I want them to be bang in the middle. I don't want them to be down by the low end. So for me, that was enough to say, right, I need to take a bit of action here. And in terms of the sort of, should we talk about the main kind of natural ways to support it? So really, there's a lot of talk about various herbs and things like that you can use, but you really do have to start with the most basic foundational things, which is sleep. Sleep is so important for testosterone. So if we're just burning the candle at both ends, we're really not taking care of what time we get to bed, dragging ourselves out of bed early to do workouts or something. That's not going to be helpful. So we do need to prioritize sleep over anything else. Stress management as well. So if there's loads of stress, then again, it's going to be difficult. No matter how many magical herbs you might be taking to help boost testosterone, it's going to be hard for your body to do that. Blood sugar management, because we have issues, for example, if we have high levels of insulin because we're having we're eating a diet that's not helpful for balancing our blood sugar. High insulin, as well as inflammation, which is what high insulin can also cause. Those two things, and also alcohol, I would say as well, those things can cause what's called aromatization, which is when your testosterone that you do have there's an enzyme called aromatase that can convert that testosterone that you do have into more estrogen. So there's all these kind of foundational pieces that need to be in place. Having plenty of protein every day, optimal protein with all your meals is important for testosterone. And then I think the one sort of helpful, it's not herb, but I can't think of the word now, maca basically is what I'm trying to describe. Adaptogen, yeah, it is a herb, yeah, kind of. That has been shown to be helpful. Anna and I have talked about the Dutch test that we both use quite a lot with our clients. It's a dried urine hormone test. And lots of the clinicians that work at the actual Dutch test laboratory will say that they do find good results with maca. So that could even just be a couple of teaspoons a day in a smoothie or something. So that's definitely what I've been putting in place since my test results. But what would you add to those lifestyle?
What I want to say first and foremost is like all of the stuff we've actually been talking about throughout the series. And maybe now if you have been watching all the videos, they're talking about the same stuff again and again. And it's because the foundations are so important. And, even though we're looking at hormones specifically, one of my favorite sayings from my functional medicine training was, when your life is out of balance, your hormones will be out of balance. So really it's about balancing your life first, and we've gone into depth in terms of sleep and blood sugar and stress management and alcohol and all of that across the previous videos. So if you want to see a deeper dive into that, go back and watch if you haven't already. I love maca as well, like you suggested. Vitamin D, and again, that's super easy. You can ask your doctor to check if your vitamin D levels are adequate, and you kind of want to be around 50 nanograms per milliliter. And then zinc is another really important one for the aromatase enzyme.
Yeah.
And green tea. So I think, if I remember correctly, 3 cups of green tea a day would give you adequate amounts of what you need to support that enzyme. So I think if you can do the sleep, sugar management, stress management, reduce your alcohol, drink your 3 cups of green tea a day, get some sunshine on your skin, and have a little bit of zinc and maca in your life, you'd be onto a really good, create a really good foundation. I guess that being said, sometimes exogenous hormones are necessary. You're doing all of those things, you're not getting traction. Sometimes that's just the way things are, and then there's no shame in maybe seeking extra support. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think so. All the lifestyle things we're talking about, and regular testing. So that test that, for example, I use MediChecks. If I don't want to just go to my GP, for example, sometimes it's just easier just to order it. I do it at home and I send it off. And I think it's about 30 or £35 or maybe 40. So
Yeah, 39, I think it is.
yeah, so it's really cheap. And I, like I said, the last time I did it was February, so I'm really due to do another one now. I want to do it every 6 months and see if the changes I've made have helped to improve it. If it's where I want it to be, then that's great. I'll just continue. If it's not, I might tweak some other things. So continuing that process of testing all the time. And then if it's like you said, when it gets to a point, or if it is already at a point where it's just not budging despite trying everything, and you're at an age where you're maybe late perimenopause or you're already postmenopause, then definitely speak to your doctor about it. But these days, currently, it's not available on the NHS in the form of the gel that we would want to be taking it. That's the safest way for women to take it. It's not licensed yet for women, it's licensed for men, but unfortunately they're just a little bit behind in terms of the fact that women need it. It's our hormone as well, it's not just a male hormone, we also need it. But you can go privately at the moment. And I read something the other day and they said it works out to be roughly about 80p a day in terms of how much you would pay for your testosterone prescription, and that would be the gel. So it is available privately. So the Dr. Louise Newson, who I'm always talking about on these sessions, she's a GP and menopause specialist specifically, and her team are working really, really hard to get testosterone licensed on the NHS as the gel. So hopefully she's talking in terms of quite soon. I don't know whether that's weeks or months, but I think, maybe next year or the year after. But until then, you can definitely get it privately.
Yeah, and I just want to share something from personal experience. Well, not personal experience, but experience working with a client with regarding testosterone. This was actually a male client who was having testosterone injections. Now, I appreciate that's a different delivery system to the gel, so the outcomes may be different as well. But he was really struggling with weight loss. He was just, he was a young guy, like in his 20s. He was training hard. He shouldn't have really been struggling to lose body fat. And so we did some blood testing, and his estrogen levels were really, really high. And we worked out that that was because the testosterone he was taking, he was aromatizing estrogen. So I guess it's also really important that whoever you're working with, who's supporting you with the hormone replacement therapy, is also monitoring you. Because if you're inflamed, if your diet is not good and your sugar levels are high, if you're not sleeping well, if your stress is through the roof, and then you're taking these exogenous hormones, they can still get metabolized down the pathways you don't want them to get metabolized down. So it's always really important, I think, to highlight that taking the exogenous hormones is not a replacement for also doing the health and lifestyle work.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to have both together so that the metabolism of those hormones is the best it can be.
Yeah, definitely. And I would always want to advocate for the lifestyle and also nutrition foundational things have to be in place, whether or not you're saying, oh, you get to a point where you say, well, none of this is working, it means I need to get the hormone therapy. That doesn't mean that you just get the hormone therapy and you don't have to bother with the lifestyle stuff. It has to be both, either all just natural and you might not need the hormone therapy, or both, but never never just the hormone therapy without the lifestyle stuff. Exactly, for all three hormones.
Yeah, totally. So is there anything else you wanted to say about testosterone, or shall we move on to our Q&A?
I think we could we could move on. I guess we could talk briefly about too much, but I think too much testosterone is kind of like a whole other life in itself, because it's a completely different series of reasons for that. So really, because we're talking about perimenopause and lower levels of hormones, then I think we've probably covered all of that, unless there's any questions from the chat. But otherwise, we could just move on. I don't think there's any.
I think let's move on to the questions that were submitted in advance.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking over here, it's because I've got them up on
Yeah,
the screen.
me too. Got one here.
So the question we have, which we might spend a bit of time on, is about surgically induced menopause. So this is actually many questions in one. But the first part of the question is, I would like to know more about the impact of hormones after a full hysterectomy. and what action I should take to make sure my hormones are optimal. So do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, so this lady, I've got the question here as well. She said she'd had a full hysterectomy 11 years ago. Now, we don't know her actual age, but I'm assuming at 11 years ago, she would have been, you know, that's basically surgically induced menopause. So she would have had that hysterectomy way before, I'm assuming, way before, you know, reaching menopause. So that puts a woman into that surgically induced menopause state, and that means that you miss out on the kind of gradual, slow transition that your body naturally goes through. So it goes through perimenopause, and then it's that slow transition to menopause, and that is helpful. Although we're talking about all these symptoms of perimenopause that can sound horrible, it's all natural, and that's really helpful for the body to go through that transitional phase and reach menopause. If you're going to reach menopause surgically, then you're missing out, like I said, you're missing out on that, and you might just have more heightened symptoms. But as this lady's asking, this was 11 years ago, so she's obviously been through all of that already and hopefully come out the other side of that. And she said 4 years ago she was offered HRT, so I'm assuming that she's been on it since 4 years ago. But her question was what action she should take to make sure the hormones are optimal. I mean, again, that's just testing. If she's on hormone therapy, I would assume that her doctor is routinely testing and making sure that's all, you know, working well. But the other thing she could be doing is just making sure, so in the sessions where we've talked about helping the liver to optimize its breakdown, metabolism and breakdown and clearance of estrogen from the body, that will be really important for her to be supporting. So because she's obviously taking exogenous estrogen as hormone therapy, so she'd want to be looking after everything in our estrogen deep dive, which I think was the session number 2. We talked about supporting those liver detoxification pathways, but yeah, the testing to make sure everything's in optimal levels. And then she said she believes testosterone may be required, but as we just said, she knows it's not available on the NHS yet. So my advice would be, as I just said, would be to go privately for that. So I always refer people to Dr. Louise Newson's website. That's the menopausedoctor.co.uk. She'll have advice on there about testosterone. She has FAQs about hormone replacement therapy, and testosterone will be on there. But yeah, you would need to go private at the moment because you do want the gel. I think there's scope for women to get the injection. I might be wrong about that, but the reason we wouldn't want that is because we can't really titrate that. Like, we don't want the same amounts that men have.
Yeah, there's a high risk of aromatase with the injection, as you know, as I shared about my male client who had it. And I think I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole necessarily, but also for women who have difficulty metabolizing histamines, if you have a whole load of testosterone coming in, and then you're getting a lot of aromatization, which is bumping up estrogen, that can start to exacerbate any histamine related symptoms. So I'm not going to go into the details of that, but if you know you're histamine sensitive and you're listening to this, then that's something extra to watch out for.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, this question that we had, she said, I believe testosterone may be required. Again, I would be thinking about symptoms. So everything we've talked about already. So, you know, obviously low or no libido is one of the big ones, but think about mood, cognition, the concentration, the foggy brain sort of symptoms, energy levels. Again, they're so, like you said, they are such universal symptoms. They overlap with so many other things. But if you're only taking, let's say, estrogen and progesterone, and you're still feeling that way, then potentially testosterone is low and you want to start adding testosterone in. I do think when women are talking to their doctors about hormone therapy, that we should have a discussion about all three. We mentioned this before. You never just want to take estrogen on its own. You definitely want to have estrogen coupled with its partner, which is the yin and yang. We want it coupled with progesterone, and we also need to have the discussion about testosterone. So if she thinks testosterone might be required, but she's not sure, I would definitely encourage her to think about the symptoms. And that could be the missing piece. And then, but she did say she got no idea about progesterone actually. So she's obviously not taking progesterone. Maybe I'm guessing here then she may have just been offered HRT in the form of estrogen only. So I would encourage her to first of all, hopefully that's body identical estrogen. and then speak to a GP about body identical progesterone, which is also known as micronized progesterone, comes in capsules. In the UK, the brand is Utrogestan. And then also, try and have that conversation. Well, go privately to have the conversation about testosterone, or ask to have your levels of testosterone checked, or do it yourself via MediChecks.
Okay, so if I was to kind of summarize in the answer to this question, the impact of hormones after a full hysterectomy is that you don't have that transition into menopause. It's like quite sudden.
Yeah.
And that can then impact the way that somebody feels. So in this case, this particular person has been given estrogen replacement, but really she wants to be having estrogen and progesterone together. And she needs to go to her doctor and also discuss the option. Well, she needs to discuss combining the estrogen and progesterone together, but also if testosterone would be helpful for her. And I assume that's where the doctor may run some tests, and through trial and error, they'll maybe just work out if it's making a difference, if it's helping her at all. Would you say that's it in a nutshell?
That's it in a nutshell. Yeah, I do believe that on the NHS after menopause, if a woman's libido hasn't come back, that's when the GPs can say, okay, we are allowed to offer you testosterone. But as I said, this isn't about libido. Just, it's everything. It's mood, strength, energy, cognition. But what I'm saying is, if you're speaking to your doctor, they're only really going to allow it if it's a libido issue. So maybe you could, for the sake of getting it, it might be that you need to say that that's the issue when, because all the other issues, they may not say, oh, that's testosterone. But as we said as well, it's not available in the gel on the NHS anyway, but you can still maybe get your levels tested with your GP and then maybe go privately just for the testosterone.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just wanted to touch on it because it was kind of the inverse of what you're saying, but there's actually been research to show that hormone replacement therapy doesn't really make that much impact on libido anyway, because there's too many other factors involved. So if libido is something you are genuinely struggling with, a really great book to read is Come As You Are. I can't remember the author, but I'll put it in the notes afterwards. Really, really great read if low libido is a challenge for you and you're looking for ways to improve it.
Okay, yeah. I'll have a read.
Shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one, do you have it? Do you want to read this one out and then I'll answer it?
I don't have it on me, no.
Okay, so the next question was about the lymphatic system. It says, I'd love to know the link between perimenopause and the lymphatic system. I've only found limited info, but there seems to be a connection to swollen lymph nodes and lymphatic dysfunction. So what I would say, first and foremost, is I wasn't quite sure with this question if it was, does perimenopause impact the lymphatic system, or are you asking if the lymphatic system is impacting perimenopausal symptoms? So it's possibly a little bit of both. But where I'll probably begin with this is like, my theory about the lymphatic system is the lymphatic system is going to be the new gut. And what I mean by that is that once everybody started learning about digestive health and the microbiome, it kind of blew up and everyone's like, your gut is so important. And it is. But actually, the lymphatic system is very, very, very closely related to the digestive system. And I think it's a system that is often overlooked in terms of the context of health. So a really great person to follow for more information on the lymphatic system, the account is Stop Chasing Pain. He does, he does a lot of, posts about the lymphatic system, but he also does some more complex trainings looking at, how to support your lymphatic system. And so for those of you who don't know, the lymphatic system is really how we clear cellular waste. It is, all our cells, in order to be able to do their jobs, they will produce waste and they will produce byproducts of metabolism. And it's through the lymphatic system that these are cleared. So if the lymphatic system is sluggish, that's going to have an impact on cellular detoxification. That's going to have an impact on overall cell health and inflammation in the body. So we've already talked a lot actually about detoxification and the liver and the importance of processing, you know, whether we're processing exogenous hormones from HRT or whether we're processing hormones from, you know, our own body. We need a healthy lymphatic system as part of that hormonal processing. And so if the lymphatic system is stuck or stagnant, that's going to have an impact on hormone balance, you know, across the board, whether you're perimenopausal or not. So the main things you could do generally to support your lymphatic system would be staying hydrated and lots of movement. Those will probably be the two things, making sure that you're having a good amount of fluid consumed each day and that you are moving your body. So what I find with a lot of people is that we are, or at least in my experience, I was probably overtraining, but under moving. So I would go and I'd do my really hard workout for like 45 minutes or an hour, or I'd do my hot yoga class, and then I would just sit at my desk for the rest of the day and then sit at the table and eat and then sit and watch TV and then go to bed. So if you can move your body a little bit every hour, it doesn't have to be loads, but just like 2 minutes of movement every hour, and you're doing that multiple times across the day, that's really beneficial. Actually, I'll share this with you. I've got this little hack. So I've got these like colored post-it notes on my desk, and there are 10 of them. And so every time I do some movement, I move one post-it note and I go put it on the cupboard over there. And so the goal is by the end of the day, I've moved all 10 post-it notes across to their little house on the cupboard. And that way I make sure I'm moving not just during my allocated exercise times, but just generally throughout the day.
Yeah. It's all, like we said, it all builds up at the end of the day, and it's so much more beneficial than just standing up for one 45-minute slot once a day or 3 times a week.
Yeah, it's just not enough. We need to be moving all the time. But I'd say if it's something you want to know a little bit more about, to check out the Lymphatic Mojo by Stop Chasing Pain. He's got a really good, it's like a 2-hour training, I think, where teaches you how to assess all the different lymph nodes on your body to see which ones are potentially blocked, because they are all over our body from top to toe. And then he also teaches you, there's like little exercises you can do to unblock them. And it's literally just like rubbing your body at like certain points. And I do it in the shower. So when I have my 2-minute cold shower at the end, it's not only a 2-minute cold shower, but when I turn the shower down to cold for the last 2 minutes of my shower, then I do all the rubbing of the places that just to stimulate the lymphatic system. So that's something really easy that you can do to support your lymphatic system, which then supports digestive function, supports inflammation in the body, and then that could potentially have a benefit on hormones.
Yeah, because I think that the question was about the link as well between perimenopause and the lymphatic system. And I would just think anything that shifts hormones significantly, which perimenopause does, will probably have some kind of impact on the lymphatic system, and vice versa. Like you said, that, you know, I think that relationship probably goes both ways. So that's maybe where the link is that perimenopause is that time of shifting hormones, shifting, changing, declining, all of that. So potentially that's the link, but it would be good to know more, I think, about the question as well.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned before we jumped on live that, you know, there are changes in fluid levels as a result of these changing hormone levels. And I think that's potentially also something that's going to impact the lymphatic system as well. So, yeah, I think, you know, at short notice, that was about the best we could do to answer that question. But I would definitely follow Stop Chasing Pain. They've got a brilliant account with loads and loads of very useful information. And I say, watch this space. The lymphatic system and the nervous system, they're like the two, they're going to be the popular systems for like 2020, 2030 plus, I bet you. You heard it here first. Good. Is there anything else, Francesca, you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, I think the one question that I didn't get in relation to this video, but I get it quite a lot, is how do you know if you're ovulating or not? It's, you know, specifically when we talk about progesterone, we say, obviously, not that we say, it is a fact that we only make progesterone as a result of ovulating. So we bang on about how to support your body to ovulate, which is all about stress management. But then obviously there's that question, well, how do I know if I've ovulated? And I wonder this every month as well in different ways. But the kind of most effective way to know is to track your basal body temperature, which is basically your baseline. Basal means baseline body temperature every morning as soon as you wake up. So you can just use a thermometer, have it by your bed, and stick it under your tongue every morning and track that every day. So you would write down either on paper, or you can use various ovulation tracking apps and just put in the number every day. And then when you need to be tracking your cycle. So when you think it's ovulation time, you're just tracking to see if you see a spike in body temperature around ovulation, and then that's likely that you ovulated if you had that spike. If you didn't, then you probably didn't ovulate. You can also check your levels of progesterone, serum progesterone, in a blood test, but you would want to test that about a week before your next period is due, because we make progesterone as a result of ovulation, and then we kind of continue to make it around that sort of week after, and then it will kind of start to decline just before your next period is due. So you want to be testing it around a week, or about sort of 7-8 days before your period is due, and then just make sure it's within a really healthy range. More is probably better in that range. And then that's a sign that you probably did ovulate, because how would you have made that amount if you hadn't ovulated? But basal body temperature is quite helpful. Obviously, some women just find that a massive pain, because it's something that you need to remember to do, obviously, every day. But you could just try it out even for 1 month and see. And then, some women go by ovulatory pain. They get a little bit of pain on the left or the right side. I definitely notice that sometimes. I think, oh, this is nice. I like this because it means I'm ovulating. But those would be the main ways.
Yeah, I would say it's easier if you have an Oura ring. So my Oura ring measures my
On my wish
body
list.
temperature every night when I sleep, and I can always tell, once I've kind of actually on the Oura ring, I feel like I ovulate just before my temperature changes, but then I can see that I get this sort of like rise in temperature for the next 14 days, which is indicative that ovulation has happened. The other thing people can do is you can get urine strips which measure your levels of luteinizing hormone. So again, it's not like a guarantee, because you could have a lot of luteinizing hormone trying to ovulate and ovulation may not happen. But I think using the luteinizing hormone strips in conjunction with something like body temperature could also be helpful. And depending on the length of your cycle, you could be ovulating anywhere from day 7 to day 21, day 7 for a shorter cycle, day 21 for a longer cycle. So just kind of knowing when to take these little assessments is important as well, just depending on the length of your cycle.
Yeah, and the other thing to note, I would just say, is that if you're on any sort of hormone, contraceptive pill or injection, then you're not going to be ovulating, because they suppress ovulation. So it doesn't apply in that instance. Yeah. Apart from maybe the Mirena coil.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
And it just maybe if on the Mirena coil, there is a certain percentage of women can still ovulate on that, but not everyone.
Yeah. I've just gone blank now about what I was going to say. I was going to say, like, a lot of people, when I speak with clients, I'll be like, so when did you ovulate? And they're like, oh, let me just go check my period tracking app. And I'm like, how does your app know you ovulated or not? So, just because if you're using a period tracking app, unless you're actually putting your body temperature into it, like Francesca described, or you're giving it some data, it's just guessing.
Yeah.
So you can't just go by a period app to determine if you're ovulating or not. You need to actually, have some sort of feedback from your body, which is giving you the signs.
Yeah, it's all very well knowing when you're due to ovulate, but do you? That's what you won't know unless you're kind of tracking those things. Yeah.
And final thing just to mention is cervical mucus. So usually just prior to ovulation, we get a surge in estrogen. And so sometimes just before ovulation, you may notice you get more like thicker and more abundant cervical mucus. But if you are estrogen dominant, sometimes you can get that at other times of the month as well. So it's a clue, but should be taken in context with other things that are going on,
Yeah,
body temperature, luteinizing hormone, etc.
exactly. It's kind of using all those three things really, and you could just use the body temperature if you want, or you know, the strips as well and the mucus, and then put the pieces together. But yeah, one thing means definitely you have. But yeah, checking progesterone levels is great, because you know, if you're checking every month at that same time and they're always low, then, or the thing with ovulation though is that you can not ovulate 1 month and then ovulate for 2 months and then not ovulate, and so it's on and off.
Yeah, and some people might not want to do a blood test every single month to see if they're ovulating, but it is an option. It is an
Yeah,
option. And yeah, as you say, like, because sometimes you can test positive 1 month, but
yeah.
all the other months you don't test, you don't know what's going on. So yeah, I think it's just, it can be a little bit overwhelming thinking, well, I've got to do all of these things. I think thinking about it in the context of where you're at and how you're feeling, obviously speaking with your doctor or working with a practitioner, which can help you iron out, you know, all the little bits and bobs and help you understand what you need to do for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it. We've covered the questions, so there's nothing live at the moment. So I think we're all good, unless there's anything else you want to say.
No, just I guess first of all, thank you so much for joining me across the past month for
Yeah.
this little series. I hope that everybody has enjoyed it and they've learned a lot from it. If people have watched these videos, they're looking for more help and support, where can they find you? How can people work with you?
So you can find me at my website, which is francescaliparoti.com, and there's like, you know, information for working with me. I run a group, so I work one-to-one with clients, and I also run a group program called Rebalance and Thrive, which is all based around rebalancing your hormones, your body. And that is, the next round of that starts in January, so that will be on my website, the information for that as well. But my Instagram profile and the link in my bio has everything on there, so that's probably the best place to go to.
Okay, awesome. So if anybody is interested in getting some more support to have healthier, happier hormones after 40, do reach out to Francesca. You will be very, very well taken care of. But until then, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Please share, like, and distribute this to anybody who needs it. And we'll see you all again soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.